Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Five Stripes Tonight, right here on the Dirty South Soccer YouTube and Facebook channel. My name is Sydney Hunt, and I am an editor and writer at Dirty South Soccer, which is, of course, SB Nation's home of everything Atlanta United. Tonight is a big night. I hear that there's something going on in downtown Atlanta or something like that. But in all seriousness, best wishes to the Atlanta Hawks, who are, of course, playing the Philadelphia 76ers as we speak, as we're on the air right now, in hopes of making it to the Eastern Conference Finals. So best wishes for them. Also, a big night for us. We are making our debut on YouTube and Facebook. As you know, we've been on Instagram, but we're not on YouTube. We're not on Facebook. That allows us to do a few things that we weren't able to do when we were on Instagram. You can still watch some of the old episodes on Instagram if you so desire. Also, Atlanta United has a real live match coming up on Sunday. I know it's been a while since they've been on the field, but they'll be back in on Sunday afternoon taking on the Philadelphia Union, which, of course, they have plenty of experience with. Negative experience, that is, of course, harkening back to the CONCACAF Champions League quarterfinals. But that's a distant memory. We're not going to talk about that. That match, by the way, is at 2 p.m. on ESPN. But, of course, we will be covering it, as we normally do, on Dirty South Soccer. We were originally supposed to have Jillian Sackvis on the show tonight. Unfortunately, she had the scheduling conflict come up last minute. So she wasn't able to make it this week, but we will work to get her on a future broadcast. However, we are happy to have a familiar face, which requires really no introduction at all. Mr. Sam Jones, good evening, sir.
Maybe a little introduction, at least, right?
Sure.
No, I'm glad you could have me on. I hate that Jill couldn't come, but you went from someone who is infectious with her personality and has a lot of fun with these things to me, a total bummer. So this will be great. Let's do it. Let's roll. I got one eye on the Hawks. I got one eye on Nashville Red Bulls. I got all my eyes, all my focus on this. Let's do it.
There you go, man. There you go. Hey, glad to have you. I mean, you're not boring at all. I got to say that for the record. But hey, man, glad to have you on. For those of you who don't know Sam, he is a writer at MLSsoccer.com. He co-hosts with Joe Patrick Five Stripe Final, which you all, I'm sure, listen to because you're very intelligent people. And he used to be, I think he still does some social media stuff for us here at Dirty South Soccer, some writing from time to time. But all-around great guy. Happy to have Sam on the show with us today. Like I said, we're live now. So hey, if you have any comments, questions, jump in on Facebook and YouTube, and let's chat. Allison Schwab, thank you very much for coming on. She says, Hawks, friend of the site, Allison Schwab, on board with us tonight here at Five Stripes Tonight. So a little bit to talk about, Sam, and I want to start with the third kit release, which you were at, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Saw some pictures from you on Twitter. First off, give me your first impressions of what you think of the kit itself.
I think it's exactly what a third kit should be, right? Like they took some risks, they took some chances with it, and I applaud them for really trying to put a message with it, right? They started that process 2 years ago. If you kind of know how kits work with this, it's a 2-year process from when it actually gets designed, when it gets put on paper and everything like that, to when it actually gets produced, right? So 2 years ago, they said, this is what we want to do. We can get a third kit. Let's make it have a message. And they did that. It's like, honestly, like if like I'm going looks here, probably like a B-, I think, as far as like the general look of it. But I think it's exactly what a third kit should be, right? But the event was great at the National Center for Civil and Human Rights last night. Got to look through the entire museum, got to look through the exhibit specifically pertaining to soccer and how it unites people together. And overall, it was just extremely well done and good to catch up with people as well. I talked to Darren for a little bit. I talked to Kevin Egan for a little bit, talked to Payson Swin for a little bit, saw Doug Robertson, of course, and a whole bunch of folks I hadn't seen in a while. So even if it makes you hungry for bacon, right? Like it's I think they took a risk, and I'm here for that, right?
Yeah, it does have that bacon look. In fact, you're right. And Allison dropping over that comment. By the way, if you're watching, you have comments here. Go ahead and drop them in the comment box on YouTube and Facebook, and we will do our best to answer them. A little bit of a caveat to the third kid. You probably saw this. Apparently, I don't speak a word of Arabic. I don't speak a word of Hebrew, so I can't confirm this specifically. But apparently, there's a little snag with one of the words in Arabic and Hebrew, and as most of you know, it's written differently than English is. English, we write, of course, from left to right. Hebrew and Arabic, or Hebrew at least, you write from right to left. And apparently, one of the words got switched around and was written anglicized, so the intended meaning of the word didn't come through. In fact, probably was gibberish in English. So that was pretty unfortunate, and you probably heard about that. But I mean, not good, not good on Adidas's part, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Especially again, considering that is that 2-year process to get it from start to finish. There was a weird gap there where that didn't get picked up, and
Right.
and to have it come out like that is, I'm sure, frustrating for everyone involved. Eleni and I did release a statement on that. Doug Roberson has it on his Twitter. They're still going to run the kit, still going to use it and everything like that. And now you can get a kit with a somewhat famous mess up on it now, which I don't know. I'm here for that, honestly. But they can only wear it 5 times a year anyway. This was going to be limited from every sense from the first place. So not great. But you learned from it, I guess. I don't know.
But I mean, like, there had to have been someone at Adidas to spot that, right? I mean, that's really an elementary error, especially if I don't want to say I'm blaming Atlanta United. I mean, this is Adidas. I mean, they designed the thing, and you would think that in quality control and all of that, someone would have at least been able to spot that. So again, not a good look, but I mean, we'll I guess at this point may have to live with it, unfortunately. So, are you getting one, by the way?
I don't got kit money. You got kit money?
No,
no way.
I do not.
And just to clarify, this is not my house. I'm house sitting. This is not a house you can afford with MLSsoccer.com money. If anyone is like, what are you talking about? He seems big. No, not mine. Not mine at all.
Yeah, you see my setup is a little bit of a downgrade from where you are right now. I just got the 1-room apartment.
It's far from normal.
No. So I live in Buckhead. The southern part of Buckhead. I don't like to say Buckhead because it sounds like I'm stuck up. But it's like the more affordable side of Buckhead, actually on the Buckhead Midtown border. So really cozy spot here at our Five Stripes Tonight home studio. But yeah, very cozy, very relaxing here. So that's the third kit. We're gonna leave that to the side. Of course, there's a match on Sunday. Finally, we don't want to talk about what happened 3 weeks ago against Nashville SC because that's in the past, and we at 5 Star Tonight like to look toward the future because it is much brighter. But Philadelphia Union, a team, like I said on the top, that LA United have plenty of experience against already, negative experience that is, in the CCL quarterfinals. Just to recap, obviously for those who aren't aware, 3-0 loss at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I believe Shabilko had a pair of goals in the second half. Atlanta, of course, looking good, but things pretty much just imploding. And then the 1-1 draw at Subaru Park. And if that wasn't enough, you have the whole narrative between Jim Curtin and Gabriel Heinze. Heinze refusing to shake Curtin's hand, and then when asked about it after the match, pretty much saying, in effect, my parents always told me if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Jim Curtin calling Heinze an a-hole. So, lot to talk about as far as Sunday's match is concerned, I'll say.
That's big Philly energy from Jim, who just got a very much deserved contract extension as well. And I'm sure that 3-0 win played a part in that, right? They're on to the semifinals of CCL. And it's interesting to me, Sid, that you mentioned that you don't want to talk about the Nashville match, but I am going to talk about the Nashville match first thing here. Because I think people were a little bit upset because they saw some similarities in how those games went down. Obviously, you get to the second half, you play well in the first half of both those games, and it seems like the team implodes just a little bit, right? But I think the ways in which those things happened were very different. I think Philadelphia was ruthless, right? Like that was a team that knew exactly how to hit Atlanta United transition, made those adjustments in the second half, and when they got their chances, they really took them. When Nashville came back against us, right? It was two very, very quick goals and within 3 minutes of each other. And honestly, really fluky. And it's kind of those things where you can throw your hands up and what can you do about it? It wasn't necessarily the team imploding. It was Nashville somehow having some voodoo trap card, right? Where they have come back from 2-0 3 times this year, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to kind of look back at those and maybe there's progress there, maybe. Right. At the very least, this Atlanta United team should be very willing and ready to go against the Philadelphia team that beat the crap out of them, thumped them. Right. Like it wasn't close. And I'm still not sure if roster wise it's close, especially right now with Joseph and Emerson gone. So we'll see. Atlanta United's going to have to pull out a lot of stops here, but maybe, just maybe, those extra wrinkles that we're having to put in cause some issues for Jim Curtin in Philadelphia. I don't know.
No, you mentioned it, and we'll definitely get into that. Joseph Martinez, of course, with Venezuela down in Brazil at Copa America, and someone would argue that it should have been played in Brazil anyway. One of those, including me, considering what's going on now there with COVID. But, of course, Emerson Hyndman last week or this past week turned his ACL in the training. So unfortunate for him. Hopefully he gets better soon and is able to come back better than ever, hopefully in 2022. But those are significant losses. I mean, obviously, Joseph Martinez is a significant loss. We saw what this team was without him in 2020. We've seen what this team is with him not 100% here in 2021. I mean, at this point, they have nobody that can score. Maybe Barco, maybe you hope Moreno, but I mean, he's pretty much done precious little during his time here, and that's unfortunate. So Lopez, I'll add Lopez to the list, but we haven't seen a ton of Lopez. So hopefully he gets going. Hopefully he finds his place in this team soon. So it looks like Cubo Torres will be starting on Sunday, and we all know. Look, we all just know, he just may, and we all know Cubo's story, right? I mean, he had a very good career with Chivas USA, RIP. Outside of that, and one good year in Houston, I mean, he's done nothing.
He hasn't looked effective here either. My hope, maybe not my belief, but my hope is that we will see Lopez shifted centrally. You could use Mulroney out in the wing. You could shift Zeke out on the wing and see what happens there, and shift Eric Lopez, who has generally played as a second striker. He said he's most comfortable as a second striker and on the wing. Maybe take over that spot. Maybe they go real crazy. Maybe they just really blow everyone's mind and come out with some weird false nine type thing. There's not a whole lot of options right now that are phenomenal. But, you know, it's most frustrating, I think, to have Joseph be gone right now, because that game against Nashville was a game where he maybe wasn't quite all the way there as far as having the speed and rhythm of the game down yet, which I still think is a work in progress as he learns to trust himself a bit more. But the athleticism was there. The explosiveness was really starting to get there. He tried a couple of bicycle kicks that never work. He tries a bicycle kick at least once a year. It's never worked. Never once.
It will someday. Hopefully
we'll someday. And the place is going to explode. It's going to be bonkers. But he had a couple of things like that. There was one moment where he ran over the touchline and kind of brought his leg. He jumped in the air and brought his leg behind him and kind of flicked the ball on. It was just extremely flexible, extremely athletic. And, you know, you start to see that. And then 3 weeks break, and now he's gone, right? So it's frustrating to have that kind of come up right now, especially with this run of games, right? This is Philadelphia, NYCFC, and Red Bulls back to back to back. That is one of the worst possible stretches I could think of for him to not be there on top of what's going on with Emerson now. But if I had to guess, Lopez is going to take that spot, but maybe that's more hopeful than anything.
Yeah. Talked about Hyndman briefly. Allison asked it in the chat, but what does Atlanta do minus Hyndman? And kind of based on that, I mean, we haven't seen much of Rossetto with the first team this season. I would imagine he's in the lineup on Saturday or Sunday. He spent some time with the twos. He is getting healthy, getting back in form after, I think it was COVID or an illness that had him down in Brazil, or getting something sorted out down there. But yeah, I think we may see him. I don't know if he's necessarily like for Hyndman at all, but he'll have some role to play, I'm sure, on Sunday. But any other options Atlanta United could go without Hyndman?
Yeah, I think you make a good point there that I think Rossetto is maybe the most like for Hyndman in the sense of their skill set, right? As far as being able to progress the ball forward and be able to be that kind of rhythmic pacer in the midfield. But my thought is they probably go with Ibarra, which adds a whole different wrinkle into it. We know Franco wants to play murder ball, right? We know he wants to get in there and just basically wreck whoever has the ball at any cost. I was laughing the other day. I was looking through some of the stats, and they aren't everything, of course, right? You want to combine eye test data with statistical data, all that kind of thing. But when Franco Ibarra is leading the team in interceptions by a significant margin, and he's played like 600 minutes less than everyone else, it kind of tells you exactly where his mindset is. Right? He's a destroyer, and he loves to do it. It's an extra wrinkle into what Atlanta United may be able to do. And it may work really well against a Philadelphia team that loves to load the middle, that has that 4-4-2 diamond, that really wants to get midfielders involved centrally as well, right? So that's my thought right now. But honestly, I've tried to guess what Gabby is going to do before and missed by miles. Who knows? They could do something bonkers like 3-5-2 is certainly an option. I think if you move Alan Franco into that back three, move Santiago Sosa up into the midfield, maybe they do something crazy. Like, I don't know, maybe George Bello is a midfielder. I don't know. Who knows at this point? Gabby loves to put these wrinkles in, and especially now that his hand has been forced. It'll be interesting to see what he does. But for the long term, obviously, this is a loss. We rag on Emerson, right? We kind of beat up on him a little bit, and I think it has most to do with his contract, right? Like, everyone sees that $900K number and sees a guy who can disappear at times, and when he does appear, it's not anything spectacular, but it is necessary at times, right? He can be a necessary player. And so when you lose players like that, you have to adjust in big ways. Like, where does Atlanta United go now to have an outlet when they're being pressed, right? Like, normally the plan was get the ball to Emerson and have him be an Agby-esque progressor of the ball. At this point, who knows?
Yeah, I kind of talked about that with Bart Keeler last week on last week's episode about Hyndman and that price tag, $900K, especially given Felipe's article in The Athletic that pretty much then cast Carlos Bocanegra in the best light that we all have read about. So moving from that, obviously Szabelka will be the prime target for the Philadelphia Union, and of course we all know his track record with Atlanta this year thus far. How does Atlanta contain a player like him?
Gosh, man, it's tough. He's been phenomenal so far this year. He really has. But you have that 2 forward setup, and I've asked Gabby about that before. I think I asked him right before the Champions League. He said, "Don't focus necessarily on the 2 forwards and worry about the numbers advantage there. The numbers advantage comes from what they're doing in midfield, and so it's guys like Dali Bedoya, it's guys like Jamiro Montero, and it's guys like Leon Flock, who is going to be a really key part of this." He's a Tyler Adams kind of esque player, I think is how most people would kind of describe him. But he runs all the time. He wins the ball back. He progresses it quickly. He's one of these. He's another Philadelphia signing that has worked almost instantly. It's amazing how often they hit with what Ernst Tanner and company are doing there. But Jose Martinez is also out for them, which is a big loss. Of course, he usually sits at the base of that diamond and does a lot of excellent things defensively, as well as plays the antagonist, right? Like, he is the foil to everything you're trying to do. And he's also trying to mess with you and get in your head. And he did a really good job at that against Atlanta and CCL, right? Kind of riled some folks up, got him angry a little bit. But he is out. He's with Venezuela as well, which is confusing Joseph Martinez and Jose Martinez on the same team. But it's a loss for them. So Leon Flock kind of has to take over some of those defensive duties as well, right? So we'll see. It's always going to be tough. They're so quick. They're so fast. I will say I'm not optimistic, honestly, about Sunday. I'll be glad to be back. I missed everyone. I missed Atlanta. I missed soccer. But maybe not optimistic about pulling this one out. They're a good team.
You mentioned Flock, and Flock, of course, was on the United States Gold Cup preliminary roster, which I'm sure you saw earlier. But, of course, we saw Miles Robinson. We saw George Bello. We talked about Bello a little bit earlier. And we also saw Brad Guzan. Now, let's kind of touch on that because I'm kind of the impression I don't think Brad will make the team. Like I say, it's a preliminary roster. It's like 60 players on there, so
right.
He's not gonna be on the team. But this we'll touch on Matt Turner a little bit. But Matt Turner, of course, is on the list, and he's done well when called upon for the most part. But then you get to Robinson, you get to Bello. Do you see both making the Gold Cup roster, and what are their prospects for each player, you think?
It is a great question, and I think the general consensus around the USMNT world and discourse, which I'm not necessarily a part of, but I still kind of you see it peripherally, right? But no one knows what's going to happen here. Honestly, you have that 60-person preliminary roster released today, and I think Paul Tenorio was tweeting about it last night of The Athletic. He was tweeting about how different his projections and Sam Stagecall's projections were from Matt Boyle, who's my colleague at MLSsoccer.com, were for this team. No one really knows how they're going to want to play it. There are so many variables, right, with this Gold Cup roster. So I can't speak to that too much, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Miles. I would be a bit surprised to see George, I think. I think George maybe hasn't quite been at that level to get that spot right now. He obviously has a ton of upside. I think eventually he's a guy who will go for a pretty decent chunk of money to Europe. But right now, I think people need to see a little bit more from him before he gets into it. Miles, on the other hand, if Miles doesn't make it, I'll be upset. Miles has been phenomenal this year.
No, I definitely agree. But Miles has really more than proven himself at the MLS level. Really one of the best center backs in the league, honestly. So some people give him some flack, but I don't see it. I mean, every center back has their off day. No one's perfect, but I think Miles has a role to play in the United States setup. And we can talk about what happened with the U23s and all of that, but I think he honestly has a place in the national team setup. And I think if he makes this Gold Cup roster and does well, that not only strengthens his status with the national team, but maybe from a domestic standpoint, gets some legs internationally.
Absolutely. No, and my thing with Miles is Miles has been one of those guys who has consistently just kind of risen to each challenge that's been put in front of him, right? He comes out as a draft pick, Generation Adidas guy, and Tata says, I don't think you're good enough yet, right? Got put in a few times, and Tata just basically said he's not good enough on the ball. And at this point, he's progressed to the point where he's gotten in a new system that's very, very similar to what Tata was doing, right? And is asked to be a guy who can play the ball over the top, who can make these lengthy passes, who can control the ball, who can make progressive runs from the center back position. He stepped up and done it. He's been phenomenal. And that's in addition to being a guy who every single person who's played with him has said, this is the single best one-on-one defender I've ever seen. And that's from guys like Michael Parkhurst, that's Jeff Lernowitz. Those are guys who have seen a lot of center backs, right? But Miles Robinson is the one. They're like, this is the best one-on-one defender. So now that he's incorporating, long balls over the top to like Marcelino against Nashville. He played a gorgeous ball to Brooks Lennon that won the penalty against Seattle. He's got everything right now. And if you aren't seeing that, then you're not paying enough attention. And if there's like some weird vendetta thing going on with the fact that they weren't allowed to go, you talked about it before, the U23s or whatever for the Olympics a while back, then someone at U.S. Soccer is making a big mistake at a a thing that spites their own face if they don't take them, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. By the way, I'm kind of surprised it took us only 25 minutes into the show for you to make your first Jeff Larentowicz mention. So very, very surprised by that. Very surprised by that.
I'm spacing them out. I got to get it.
Yeah. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta cut you loose here in a few minutes, but let's talk about score lines then. I'll kind of go first. I kind of echo what you're saying about the prospects of Atlanta United against Philly. Philly are a very good team. They won the Supporters Shield last year for a reason. They're in the CCL semifinals for a reason, even though they're going to get smoked by Club America in the semifinals in a few months. But they're in this position for a reason, and that speaks to, like you said, the work of Ernst Tanner, the front office, the work of Jim Curtin and the coaching staff there at Philly. So it's a really strong team, and a team that can make even more waves in the Eastern Conference picture. Whether they can make that next leap to MLS Cup champion remains to be seen. But at this point in time, it's a much better team than Atlanta United, with especially a proven striker in Shabilko, Bedoya, as you mentioned, and then a number of other pieces, Martinez and Flock. Martinez, like you said, the villain that we all remember from last time out at the Benz. But hopefully there's no gamesmanship and housery on the field. And hopefully Jim Curtin and Heinze can shake hands after the match, no matter what the result is. But I'm going to say maybe a 2-0 for Philly. I think Shabilko gets at least one goal, and that's that. What are your thoughts?
That's completely fair. I'll try and be more optimistic with it by being negative, I guess. I think they may understand the position they're in right now with Joseph out, with Emerson, and with a chance to kind of integrate new things into the system. Like, Gabby is always going to want to be the protagonist, but I think he also understands what he needs to do to get a result, right? So maybe we see Ibarra in, and maybe we see a little bit of a more compact and conservative Atlanta United, understanding that they don't want to get killed in transition again. And maybe, just maybe, this turns into a 0-0 or a 1-1, and they get out of here with the point. I'll go 1-1 and pray that no one checks back on that later when we lose 5-0.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta United at this point would gladly sign up for a draw. 1-1, 0-0, 2-2, whatever. It's not going to be 2-2, but you get the picture. They take that any day of the week at this point, especially with the roster the way it is. Cut you loose, like I said, but before I do, let people know how they can find you online. You're everywhere.
I try to be, right. Yeah. Obnoxiously so. I'm on Twitter at @J_Sam Jones. And of course, I'm on the mothership as well. Go to MLSsoccer.com. I've got a piece up right now. I talked to the artist and some of the people behind the Juneteenth celebrations that are going on this weekend at MLS. Some really cool stuff there on the site about that. And yeah, go check out that. Go check out MLSsoccer.com/newsletters. You can subscribe to the Daily Kickoff, which is the daily newsletter I do for MLS. And hopefully I'm a little more articulate there than I am talking, but who knows? Who knows?
No, but by the way, if you guys haven't read Sam's writing, maybe you're new to the show and you haven't read Sam's writing. He's an excellent writer. Always enjoy reading what he has to write, and hopefully I will we'll get to read more of it down the road. Sam Jones, thank you so much. I know it's short notice that we got you on, but thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Sid. Have a good night.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, Sam Jones here on Five Stripes Tonight again at @J_Sam Jones on Twitter. Thanks again for him joining us here on the show, our first show on YouTube and Facebook. That does it for another edition of Five Stripes Tonight. So glad you could join me this evening. You can follow me on Twitter at SHWrites, SHWRITES. And of course, for the latest Atlanta United news, you can log on to our website, DirtySouthSoccer.com. SB Nation's home for everything Atlanta United. Again, my name is Sydney Hunt. Delighted you can join me tonight. We'll be back next week with another edition of Five Stripes Tonight. So long, everyone.